I saw it as an opportunity after many years after I had left university to revisit this. Revisit this with everything I had learned in between, with seeing what had actually kind of influenced my thinking, and really looking at where has it failed. Because actually it seems to be such a clever idea. Even if you think about Haller or whatever, you think that must be the solution, but it's never really become the solution. We're still building in a different way. So I asked the question to my students and to myself: have we missed a trick somewhere? What is that bit that's missing that made us not pursue it further? We do not want to live in standardized boxes. We don't want to live in an environment where you walk for miles or drive for miles and it all looks the same. It just doesn't work that way. Our goal here was to bring together that sort of the good bits of the standardization and modularization and prefabrication and all that sort of stuff that all sounds so incredibly logical and convincing, with those aspects of human nature and individuality that in the end we felt were missing. I went to university and started studying architecture. Fritz Haller was my first teacher. He was, on the one hand, he pursued with vigor his ideas of system building and he called it the general solution to construction, basically. On the other hand, I think he was quite liberal in that sort of way, that he would have appreciated to see these kind of ideas. There is this thinking of scale, and there's always, the detail is always seen in the context of the whole. It never lives for itself. It goes from space stations all the way to connection detail, basically. And so there was a certain logic that went through the entire concept. And it was actually this whole idea of that it is in the end about how you put things together logically that also made me study engineering, because I thought the two, architecture and structural engineering in that sense, you can't divide them apart, because in a way it is all about how things are joined together and how things are fused together. I think in a way Haller was about simplification in the best sense of the concept. I always think that the simple solutions are the best. I think that's what this taught me. But to arrive at the simple solution costs a lot of work. It is very difficult, and there's a certain beauty in that. And I think it's a beauty that you find in how Haller describes his stuff, but also in how it's put together. This modularity, I think this is a process, you kind of absorb this and then it stays with you, and you don't necessarily consciously always kind of think about everything has to be modular. But it's somewhere in the back of your mind. It's like riding a bike. I do see the polarization or the dichotomy between the standardization and the requirement for individualization, as we call it in our concept here. Not every site is the same, not all site conditions are the same, not all environmental conditions are the same. So there needs to be an ability to adapt to various different conditions, but also the user doesn't want to have always the same standard box, wants to have that flexibility and the possibility to individually reconfigure things. We looked at a design tool combined with a kit of parts. The kit of parts is effectively the pieces out of which we can then build whatever we need to build. But the design tool allows you to bring this flexibility and individuality into your project. And what we mean by that is we set a few ground rules. We looked at, in the first instance, how we can classify the different elements that make a building into say, we call it various levels of hardness. We defined as hard those voids that you need in a building to service a building, where your water goes through and your electricity is being, your gas is being piped around the building. And then we had a sort of hard, soft, medium hard kind of category of elements that are those that have a lifespan of, say, 20 to 30 years. And we put in there the mechanical and electrical installations, your water pipes, your electricity, your heating, cooling, ventilation, whatever you may have. and potentially also the facade, the facade of your building. These are the bits that you may change after 30 years, but you will not change the frame, say. And then you have the more soft elements that you probably change every 10 years, You will change your kitchen because you get tired of your old kitchen, you want to have a new one, you upgrade, whatever it is. You change your bathroom because you want to reconfigure it. You have some internal partitions that you may move around because you want to knock 2 rooms together and make one out of it, So with this gradation, we then looked at, in the first instance, how we structure those hard parts, because they're the ones that are the tricky bits, right? You need to go get those right so that you can also modularize them and standardize them to a degree so that you can prefabricate pieces that are more quickly pieced together. Because one big element of thinking that sat behind all this is that the way we are building our buildings at the moment hasn't changed in principle for quite a long time. We're still having somebody to put up the frame. We still then have the big fit-out crew come in there. We still have the people who put the render on the outside. Whereas, say, other areas of manufacture have moved on quite dramatically, building industry is still very much kind of in this old tradition. So it's wasteful, it's time-consuming, it's slow, and so we thought about how we can basically use the standardization and modularization to overcome some of these problems. It gives the architect the freedom to design a building with quite a lot of individuality, so you're not fixed into one module. It's not all like 4.5 meters or 5 meters or whatever fixed dimensions. And at the same time, you also get that flexibility to rearrange the softer parts within that hard frame during the lifespan of the building. The logic of modularity isn't resolved in having always the same parts. It's resolved in having always the same way how you connect parts. And I think that is the sort of leap that we try to make here. So long as I have a logic in how things are pieced together, then I have a modular logic in my system. So the system logic is condensed into zones of connectivity or connections. And that's what you will find in what we've done here. So the first step that we took coming back from Boisbuchet, we spent quite some time, and you will see the sketches here, to work out the geometrical basics. So that what we postulated would be that connectivity or the connection zone, that actually works. So this is quite an intricate piece of geometry which we then developed further. It's now very simple. Just if you look at it, it works always on the same principle. Extremely simple. All parts are connected to all parts in exactly the same way. But then the second piece was also to develop this design tool further. In Boisbuchet, we just had a rudimentary idea of what that design tool, this parametric design tool, that sits behind the whole process, what that should do, and we define that further. You can focus on how you fill the site, how you rotate your building, how many flats you have, how big they are, and all that sort of stuff. What we're trying to do here is actually geared at mass housing. It is the idea behind this is mass housing, and I come back to that in a moment. But mass housing at a high quality. The whole system is set up in such a way that you don't necessarily end up with mass housing being a cheap and bad product. It's set up in such a way that you can get all the benefits from the prefabrication, the offsite manufacture, the quick and easy installation and so on, which then has a beneficial effect on the cost, but it's free enough and flexible enough to get any kind of architecture out of it you want. You get a bad architect working with that stuff, you will get a bad project, I guarantee you. But you get a good architect working with that, they will find no limitations to what they're doing normally in reinforced concrete and standard method of construction with this type system. The reason why we made this so realistic almost is I want to build this. I'm now looking for collaborators. Basically, I'm looking for fabricators and contractors who I can work with to develop this further. I've spoken to the Greater London Authority. The GLA is basically the they're the ones who make key political decisions in London. And I had lunch with them just a few days ago, and I explained to them what we're doing here, and they find this extremely interesting. There is a massive shortage of affordable housing in London, and one aspect of solving this housing problem is building cheaper and building more quickly in particular. I will work now with the GLA to develop that side of things as well as the technical side of things. So this is just the beginning of a journey, I would hope.